Welcome, everyone, to the One-on-One podcast. I'm John Evans. When you hear the term meteoric rise to fame, you should think of the name Mitchell Slaggert. Just a few short years ago, Mitchell was a Cape Fear Community College student walking to class in downtown Wilmington when a stranger tapped him on the shoulder, asked him if he'd ever considered becoming a model. A few short weeks later, Mitchell was modeling Calvin Klein underwear and walking on some of the most famous runways in the world. Well, the same person that tapped Mitchell on the shoulder that day, Daniel Peddle, then cast Mitchell as the lead in a movie he was shooting in Carolina Beach. Well, let's fast forward now to 2018. Mitchell Slaggert is one of the most famous faces in the world, and now he's building on that acting career. 3 years ago, you're walking on a street in downtown Wilmington. Before the discovery, what brought you to Cape Fear Community College? What lured you there? Why did you start taking classes there?
So before that, I was actually training for the Marine Corps. I had a mentor of mine. He would come to my house at 4 a.m. every morning, just training me so I'd not go into war being like cannon fodder. I'll be like, Special Forces, go there, cut the head off the snake, and be done with it. So then I lost a kidney in a car accident when I was 7, so the Marine Corps said no. And then by that time, my father's a mechanical engineer, so I had a Jeep and a boat. I'm like, see you, Pa, moving to the coast. Went to criminal justice, and then I switched it to mechanical engineering. So that's, college degree brought me out there. I was going to do 2 years and transfer to a different college.
So Cape Fear just kind of was the place you picked?
Yeah.
Or was Wilmington as much?
I wanted to live on the ocean, so going out spearfishing all the time and living the good life.
And that's why a lot of kids come to UNCW and Cape Fear Community College, because they like it so much. So take me back to that day. You're walking downtown. What had you done before that, and the mindset of the day after Daniel walked up and tapped you on the shoulder?
So, I was just walking my car after class, and I see Daniel wearing some, Givenchy clothes, and I was like, you don't really see that in Wilmington, so I was like, it looks interesting. Walked past him. About, 20 steps later, he, taps me on the shoulder and asked me if I want to be a model, and I was like, thank you, no thank you. And my uncle's a 2-star in Homeland. He was telling me about this BORTAC gig down in Texas, where it's essentially, the Special Forces of Homeland Security. So I was like, I'm going to be doing that, and then, so he was, I could tell he was a bit nervous, which I found interesting. And he was like, here's my card. I'll be expecting to hear from you. Wait, let me backtrack a little bit. Yeah, he goes, I just go with Jennifer Lawrence, da this, da that. And I was like, all right, too good to be true, right? It didn't really seem feasible. And he's like, here's my card. I'll be expecting to hear from you. I'm like, all right, who says that, right? So I Googled him. He was the real deal. And I had a friend of mine at the time, and he wanted to be a model. So I took him to go meet him. And about 2-3 days later, and essentially he wasn't tall enough, and basically all it came down to was 6 photos. So via on an iPhone, just 3 with the shirt on from front, side, and 3 with the shirt off, front, side, and then I get a contract in the mail from DNA, and I'm like, DNA, what is this? I don't know none of my family knows anything about this industry. So we do a little bit of research, and we're like, holy crap, this is arguably the most prestigious modeling agency in New York City, and which was mind-blowing. So never been in New York City before, so up here just living on Wall Street and meeting people from all over the world. And I'm like, this is absolutely incredible. And then 2 weeks later, I'm going to Italy for the first time in my life to do the Calvin Klein runway. And after that, I became the Calvin Klein guy.
Is it still hard for you to believe? I mean, it's been 3 years. You've done crazy, movies. Man. You've done this. I mean, you wake up in the morning, you look out at New York where you're living now and the things that have happened. Is it still, you shake your head?
Yeah, it's an absolute godsend, and I'm thanking the good Lord every day for it.
What did your parents say when all this started happening? I mean, I know you're from Fayetteville, Georgia, and everything like that, and I have a couple of questions about your parents, especially your mom putting posters in your dad's workshop, but that's a little bit later. But what did they say when this all really started to roll downhill?
They were a bit hesitant on it at first, just because they didn't know anything about it, and they heard everybody hears the horror stories about this industry. But they did the research. They met with Daniel, and then after meeting with Daniel, they were like, all right, I get a good feeling about this guy, and they just kind of threw me out there. You know, I'm old enough to do my own thing, and the ball started rolling as they were just like, "Holy crap! This is actually something huge."
Did you have to do anything in particular to get over maybe the anxiety or the trepidation of, you know, getting your pictures taken in a way you probably never had pictures taken before, or walking on a runway that you had never done before? I mean, this is an industry that all eyes focus on the person either in the photograph or on the runway. And for somebody who had never done that, I imagine there had to be some anxiety about that.
Yeah, so my first modeling gig was for GQ Germany. It was like an editorial, and it wasn't. It was a bit weird at first because, like, you know, I'm walking around Brooklyn with like clothes that, like, you know, grab attention. So like everybody's looking at me while I'm getting my photos taken. I'm like, this is just, you know, it's just unsettling a little bit. But then eventually you kind of got over it, just rolled with it. And then the runway thing was, that's the first thing I learned how to do in my life is walk. So here's just walk a little bit faster. So there really wasn't any anxiety with that one.
Yeah, I imagine it didn't take as much getting used to as people might think it did.
Yeah. But
was there ever...
I do see people with like PhDs like freaking themselves out on the runway too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they just get like in their head too much, and I don't know. So it varies per individual.
Did you ever think at any point in time you'd be wearing gold metallic pants?
Never in my life. Never in my life have I think I was doing this.
What do you have to do on a daily basis? Doing some research on you, you said you really can't lift weights, but you do work out. So what is a day like when you're not actually on a shoot?
So basically get up, have breakfast, I run 2 miles to the gym, get my workout, play some basketball, and run 2 miles back home. And then I take classes at Stella Adler. So it's at 27th and Broadway, and I'm taking one of the best classes in one of the best schools in New York City. And the professors are all amazing. One of the professors, actually, Todd Thaley, actually cast me in a movie already. So, and with those courses, they're very demanding. So there's a lot of outside work as well. So I'll meet up with a scene partner, practice with the scenes, or like I'll do my research, read a play. So there's a lot of subtle things going on here and there. And the one downside about this gig is essentially like I can't really create a schedule. Where before, like my brother's never been to New York City, so I wanted to share my blessings and, you know, bring him up here. And as I brought him up here, it was like, bam, you landed another Calvin Klein underwear campaign. So it's like I'm not going to be like, no, I can't do that. My brother's here. I'm totally going to take the job, but yeah.
When you got the opportunity to be in Daniel's movie in Moss, it brought you back here. But from some of the things that I have read, it really was Mitchell, where you were in, the conditions you were in, kind of like an area you were familiar with in Carolina Beach and outdoors. You're an outdoors kind of guy where you grew up, right?
Growing up, I wanted to be Steve Irwin. So I used to have like massive aquariums, and I sometimes would catch poisonous snakes and put a label on it like caution poisonous snake. Like my mom didn't really like it too much, but my dad thought it was kind of neat. And I would have like 5 just massive aquariums. So me and my buddy we'd always be out in the woods, just, you know, finding something to do, collecting our sanity or something.
And what was that whole experience like? I guess you had a couple of weeks acting training before you got started, but you immerse yourself in that character?
Yeah, definitely. All I had to do was like basically go back to a 16-year-old mentality of myself and make myself just even more dirty. So it wasn't the hardest adaptation, but the whole experience was mind-blowing. I never knew like what it took to make a movie and how basically you're shooting scenes throughout the whole movie every day and just kind of compiling it all together. One of the biggest like eye-opening was having Christine Marzano. She was actually a trained actor in the movie. Just because me and Billy had no acting experience about that, she would give us like little subtle details to help sell our acting, which is like, okay, little micro movements in the eyes. And I was like, wow, I never even thought about that. But it was definitely great because Daniel's such a phenomenal individual. So from that trickle down effect, from the top down, everybody's happy and having a great time, and we're like, this is directly going to correlate with the outcome of the movie, and it did. And so I would say having the great cast and the great crew definitely made it a lot easier than the location. And I mean, we would be trekking out like 5 people out in the swamps because you can't bring a whole crew out there. So that was certainly interesting. I mean, I don't even know where to stop and begin because there's just so many things that I took away from it, and so many memories I'm always gonna have the rest of my life. And just absolute blessing, man.
Did you know that part of Carolina Beach existed? Because when most people cross that bridge to get into Carolina Beach, they see the Food Lion Shopping Center, they see, the Fat Pelican, they see, beach and tourism. Did you know that part was there at Carolina Beach before you got down there?
Somewhat. I've been out on the Cape Fear River a little bit in that park, but I haven't really explored it nearly as much as I did then. So yes and no.
Daniel said that you had a near encounter with a water moccasin.
Yeah, so we're probably about a little more than knee deep in the water of the swamps, and I'm just pushing the canoe through to kind of get so we got the camera just strapped to the canoe, and the 2 guys are from Germany, and they're not really used to the woods and whatnot, and so I'm just wading through the swamps, and all of a sudden I step on a stick, and I see a water moccasin just pop his head up, and I jump back out of the water, and that thing just swims off, and I was like, ooh, all right.
This is a little more dangerous than you thought it was going to be.
And then I had to go back out. I didn't jump back with the canoe. I just jumped out of the water. So I had to go back out there and get it. I waited like 5 minutes. I'm like, yeah, he's probably gone by now.
Well, you being outside like that, I imagine it. Although water moccasins are scary, I imagine you'd probably seen something like that before.
Yeah, I had a buddy down in Georgia. We were swimming in the lake, and he actually got bit by one, but it was a dry bite, so it didn't inject any venom. So.
Did you know a lot of the smaller things that Daniel had put in that movie? Like, he told me that it was actually a telling of Red Riding Hood. I didn't realize that concept, and you had a red sweatshirt on that had a hood on it. I never put that together.
Yeah, so what's amazing about Moss is I've probably seen it 8 times, and I pick up on more subtle details every time. But yeah, he did tell me the kind of general premise and the general spin-off, how it's going to be like spin off the Little Red Riding Hood, but he's going to throw another spin again where essentially the wolf isn't necessarily a bad wolf.
And that's Christine's part.
Exactly.
Yeah. How big a kick was it for you to get Billy in that film?
That was amazing. So that was my mentor. That was the guy who would come to my house at 4 a.m. every morning to train me. He spent a good considerable time in the Marine Corps, and he was just a man just full of wisdom and charisma, and he's an easy one to befriend. How
did you meet him?
So once I moved out of Georgia, North Carolina, he was our lifeguarding boss. And then all my brothers and sisters worked for him as a lifeguard, and then he just became part of the family essentially. So going back to the question, basically what happened was Billy commented on one of my photos, and Daniel gives me a call up, and he's like, "Man, who the hell is this guy?" And I'm like, "Oh man, that's Billy. That's my mentor. He's an awesome dude." And he's like, "Oh man, give me his number. I want to talk to him." So Daniel literally cast him once he heard his voice. So he's like, "Oh man, he's got a face in the voice for the movie. Bam, done, sold."
Isn't Billy doing some modeling now too?
Yeah, I got him signed to DNA now. He's already been in GQ and everything.
Man, I'll tell you what.
She's got a Home Depot commercial coming out shortly as well.
That must be a kick for you to be able to help him that way.
Yeah, just reach your hand down in the water and pull up one of your best pals.
Talk to me about your family. I know a little bit about the fact that you were raised in Fayetteville, Georgia area. But don't you have a brother in the Marine Corps? And I know you said you wanted to get in the Marines. But talk to me a little bit about your family and who else is in your family.
So my father's a mechanical engineer, businessman, and my mom's a psychologist. She works with special needs children. And then my brother's on deployment right now. He'll get back, I think, a little after Christmas. And then my oldest sister, she's a nuclear missiles and science operations officer, so she's out in nowhere in North Dakota. And then my little sister, she's a D1 equestrian for Charleston. So she jumps horses for University of Charleston.
Do they keep you grounded?
Oh yeah, yeah. If I ever get inflated ego, I always tell them like get a running start and knock me out, and they can and will. So.
What have you been able to do to kind of share your success with them? Been able to take them anywhere? Been able to introduce them to anything?
Well, I got an amazing story for you. So my sister, I was in LA doing the Mosquito show, and my sister was in San Diego, so she got to come hang out and stay with us. And then I was like, Casey, whatever you want to do, like we want to get this time together, like let's make the most of it. She's like, okay, I want to grab a bite, and then grab a bite at the chateau, and then like she's going, I want to go clubbing. So I was like, okay, well let's go clubbing. And then this manager guy who really wants to bring me on board when when I need a manager, he kind of like took us under his wing and brought us out to the club, and he pulls me around the other side of the table. He was like, man, there's the owner, there's Katy Perry, and there's Rihanna. And I see my sister dancing right next to Rihanna, just not knowing that she's right next to Rihanna. And she's a big fan. So it was funny because after like 15 minutes talking, I was like, man, watch this. I want to go say hi to my sister real quick. And then I'm like, hey, Casey, that's Rihanna right there. She looks at me like, what? And then looks at Rihanna and looks back at me like, oh. And then it was really funny. Rihanna was like the nicest person ever. We were sitting there talking with her for like 20 minutes, and then one of her bodyguards was like, you want me to get rid of these guys? And she's like, man, why would I be talking to these guys for 20 minutes if you wanted me to get rid of them?
That's a world that is able. It's kind of neat when you're able to do something like that and share that with loved ones.
It means the world to me.
And you said you were interested in getting to the Marines, but your brother is actually deployed. You get a chance to talk to him at all?
Yeah, he gets. I get to talk to him here and there. He's a comms guy, so he can tactically acquire a satellite phone and call home. But he really can't really talk about too much of what he does. So it's interesting. He's having a good time. He's with some good old boys, and but it's basically all I really know.
Well, the thing, and the reason I ask is I mean, and let's face it, many times when somebody is doing the work that you're doing, you kind of set aside and maybe put up on a little bit of a pedestal. But, the United States military and people serving their country and being possibly threatened by, the other side, whatever the other side is, that hits even families like you. You're involved with something like that, and so it's real-world stuff for the Slaggert family.
Yep, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without my brother and millions of other families.
Didn't you interview for a job with Homeland Security? Oh
yeah. So, like I said, my uncle was a 2-star general. I mean, basically the equivalent. That's not really. I think it's a brigadier, so it might be like 1 star. I forgot. He's changing titles a lot and moving around a lot. So yeah, he told me about this thing. It's basically border patrol. Now, just be a border patrol agent, but you'd start off there, and then you could essentially move into BORTAC. And BORTAC is kind of like it's like a border patrol like SWAT team. But it's kind of like there's a high dropout rate, and I don't quote me on this, but I actually I was told by someone that it's actually the unit that extracts the president. But don't quote me on this. I don't know if it's 100% true.
Right.
But so I was like, this sounds very interesting. I could be doing the military stuff in Homeland with a better paycheck.
And serving your country.
Yeah, exactly.
Good stuff there. Tell me about the meeting with Kendall Jenner. I mean, I'm not a big guy for TMZ kind of stuff like that, but one of the things I think that, and when somebody asked you if you knew who Kate Moss was, you were like, no, I don't. But one of the things I think that points out to you is you were just a regular guy before all this started. I mean, exactly. You didn't start doing this at like 5 years old and want to do this. You were just a regular guy. So some of these TMZ kind of people, you really didn't know much about.
No, not at all. So me and Kendall was interesting. So I flew to London, and then I was kind of jet lagged. So I talked to us a little bit, and then lunchtime rolls around, and she just goes in her room and eats lunch by herself, and I'm like, That's not all right. So I go around and talk up like strike up more conversation with her, and then I'm basic conversation. I'm like, how many siblings do you have? She's like, oh, I have 7 sisters. I'm like, holy crap, you have 7 sisters? Like, what do they do? And she's like, well, one of them's Kim Kardashian. I'm like, what's your last name again? And she's like, Jenner. And I'm like, oh, so you're famous as blank, but
right.
But she was a sweetheart. She was always she was fun loving. Always had a smile on her face and just having a grand old time. And it was funny. I ran into her like about probably like 3 months after that, after a party, and she kept looking over at me like, I know that guy, but like, how do I know that guy?
What was your first holy crap moment? The first you realized what you were in for? I mean, whether it be just a long day or whether it be something that was done that you had no idea. There had to be a point, probably after the 2 weeks when you flew overseas, but that you just shook your head like, wow, I didn't know this happened.
I definitely, I mean, definitely the Calvin Klein show in Italy. It was just kind of like, oh, this is big stuff, right? And then I would say, I mean, there's a few other milestones, but another massive milestone was when I was working with Margot Robbie on set for Calvin Klein. Mm-hmm. So that was amazing. So there was like an old Euphoria ad for a fragrance, and it's just her and my torso. So they cut my head out. I understand it's a perfume ad, but I was like, crap.
Did you at least get to keep the negatives so they knew it was you?
No.
What don't people know about the entire industry in modeling? Is it tougher than it looks?
Essentially, the best way I can phrase it is if the shoe doesn't fit, don't wear it, right? So sometimes I'll go into a casting and there'll be like a bunch of like skinny, long-haired, like skinny-looking guys, and I'm like, look at the casting director, like, what am I doing here? I'm not going to get this job. So, and also like size, basically like the reason I'm a model is because I fit like a sample size clothes. So, sometimes people like take it personally when they don't get those jobs, but it's not the case at all. It's just the shoe doesn't fit, don't wear it. It's not the aesthetic, or you don't have the right shoulder build or whatever. There's variables that go into it.
Is it a tight-knit community?
Yes and no. You'd be surprised how many male models and female models there are, and so, but if from DNA standpoint, yes, it's a tight-knit community, because I thoroughly believe that they hire individuals about, like 65% aesthetic, 35% if you're a good person or not. So there's not one person I met at DNA that I wasn't like, oh, you're amazing.
What would you like to do again that maybe you can't because of your notoriety, or can you still go out and go grocery shopping and do everything that you need to do?
I can still get, I mainly only get recognized at the gym. So, just like what happened with Kendall's, like, I know that guy, but how do I know that guy, right? So I got to be in a certain place for a long period of time for someone to be like, maybe recognize me. So how about like an F-list celebrity?
Talk to me about the whole process for Wish Upon, because that seemed like a pretty cool movie, and you were almost kind of cast as the person who always gets killed in the horror movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So,
or like that person in Star Trek that goes out with Captain Kirk down to the planet. They're not coming back.
No, they're not coming back. So I'm actually going to backtrack it, because this is another instance where I won a lottery. So New York Times did an article on the new Calvin Klein guy, and then this lady, Sharon Jackson, she's an absolute sweetheart. She's an absolute sweetheart, but I bring her to a bar fight. She's amazing. So she read the article and then took my Instagram name and added @gmail.com to it. And then I just get this email, and I openly admit I don't know much about this industry, so I was just like screenshot it, send to my agents, and they're like, holy crap, like this is huge. And she's in town for a movie premiere. So we all went to go meet her, and basically they told her, DNA told her that like I was one of the hardest workers they've ever had. So I had to lose like 10 pounds of muscle mass, because I was like getting built for the Marine Corps still. So I just started running, and so they all said the right things, and so she brought me on board and started sending me auditions, and she's the 8th best agent in Hollywood. So she ended up passing me off to one of her subordinates, and so we can kind of communicate a little more.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually he's got Wonder Woman now too. He's got Gal Gadot.
Yeah.
So basically that's kind of where that stemmed from. And then working with, so I was actually juggling a TV show in Mexico. It's called Diablo Guardian, along with Wish Upon. So it was interesting seeing both casts, but Wish Upon was hands down going to be one of the most memorable projects because, again, like Moss, from the top down, John Leonetti was just an amazing individual. He made it. He was so nice. He made everybody want to give 110% for him. So, and then the cast, Joey King's a sweetheart. Ryan Felipe is an awesome dude. I mean, I really can't emphasize enough like how amazing every individual was and how everybody carried their own weight to create this movie.
Any time during that process? I mean, I know you have to be confident when you're walking on the runway. I know you have to, just ooze confidence when you're in a photo shoot. But when you're in this process and you're working with somebody like a Ryan Phillippe and everything like that, was there any time during that process that you were like, man, I may be in a little bit too heavy here?
So, not really, because like I said, I didn't really know too much about it. So I knew that they're famous, but I didn't know they were like, that famous. So, that definitely helped as well. But I learned this trick that I kind of taught myself where, sometimes I would go in front of auditions and I'd be nervous. And that's your adrenaline pumping through your veins. So I was like, okay, adrenaline's the same thing as excitement, right? So just get yourself excited like Christmas morning, then go do the audition, right? And then it came to a point where I could get myself excited, calm down, and be level-headed and go into it. So that was my process of working on a movie like this. But yeah, there's definitely like in the initial part of it, there was definitely some nerves because it's new, right? So.
Yeah. And I saw a program or a video that you and Ryan and Joey were on, and he says Mitch has a big career ahead. I see him as a brother, and somebody with that notoriety and somebody with that kind of background already, that had to, I know you smiled and you kind of chuckled because the camera panned over to you, but that's still got to be, pat yourself on the back if you get that opportunity when you hear something like that.
Oh yeah, that's definitely made me feel good. But Ryan's kind of like the same mentality as me and my brother. He's got that new TV show called Shoot Around. So it's an amazing show. I'm caught up with it. But so yeah, we enjoy all the same things. So we're a lot alike essentially. So that's probably the reason why I said that.
What do you do when you're not working? What does Mitchell do when he's got some time, when you want to just kind of, blow the rest of the world off for maybe a couple hours?
I'll go out fishing at 4 a.m. I just got back from Shelter Island late Sunday, and we were going after some striped bass, and we got skunked. I don't know. Apparently a pod of porpoises moved in, but still worth it. I mean, I saw probably 3 dozen shooting stars. It was amazing.
You're still a Southern guy.
Yeah, I still love getting out in the woods, hunting, fishing as much as possible.
Do you get starstruck?
I haven't yet. The closest I was like with Margot Robbie. I was a little bit nervous, but she was just such a sweetheart. I got a hilarious story for you with her. I'm sitting here drinking a coffee, but my hand wasn't on it. And so she's like, oh, and me and the other guy who shot Calvin Klein Under were both working on this job. And she's like, oh, Mitch Julian, I got your coffee. And, I'm not going to be like, nah, I got one. I was like, oh, my God, thank you so much. So, after that, it kind of, dissolved it. But, yeah.
That's still got to be kind of cool. Okay, now I want to get to this because you mentioned this, and I forget, and I looked up maybe 10 or 15 articles that you'd done or little interviews that you'd done, but you mentioned something about your mom plastering some of your Calvin Klein underwear posters in your dad's office or workshop.
Apparently that was a joke. Apparently, I thought that my mom was doing it, but she didn't. I guess I completely misinterpreted that. But yeah, we do have massive posters of me in the house, but they're like, in random places, but not in my dad's workshop.
How would he react if that happened?
He would the exact way that he would have been like, Kelly, I love her son, but I don't be staring at his underwear all the time. Yeah, my mom called me out on that. And I'm like, whoops, I completely thought you were serious when you did that. But that's just something she would, I could see her, wanting to find places for these things and not just keeping them in the attic to collect dust.
What is your long-term plan? Do you have long-term plans, or you mentioned earlier that you really can't set a schedule because of what you do. But do you have a long-term plan of where you want to be in 5 years, where you want to be in 10 years?
Essentially, long-term plan, main goal is to just be the best actor I can be. So I'm spending just about every waking minute that I have free to, work on my training and dive into depth on just certain aspects of the trade, because there's so much that goes into it. Where, Tom Cruise still has stuff to learn because it's all a self-discovery journey. So I also do a bunch, since I'm always learning about myself. I also do like a bunch of just random research on the web about like the cosmos or just the Mariana Trench or just random stuff that just piques my interest. So basically, that's kind of where I spend most of my time. And then I got a bunch of level-headed friends in the city, so we go out there. We go hit up some speakeasies, find those old Prohibition era spots that not a lot of people know about, and avoid the crowds as much as possible. That's basically
what's in
New York.
What's in the pipeline now, though? What's up next for you? I know sometimes the modeling gigs come like in a heartbeat, but do you have any film work that you're working on?
So I have many opportunities. Nothing that's kind of come to fruition just yet, but I do have some more independent movies coming out. So basically, I'm kind of in a position where it's an interesting position. I'm not like a A-list celebrity, so a lot of these independent movies, they still need funding, and it's easier to cast Ryan Reynolds and get funding for a movie than cast Mitchell Slaggert and get funding for a movie. So.
Now it is. It won't be in about 3 or 4 years. Now it may be.
Yeah, exactly. So, but there's prime example. Like there's this new Pokemon movie coming out. It's gonna be like kind of like same CGI as like Avatar or whatnot, and they auditioned for it and they cast Ryan Reynolds, and I was like, that's why I used it.
It's got to be what draws you to the independent movies like that? Your experiences so far?
First of all, it's an honor to be considered for any gig. But what draws me to the independent movies is kind of like the artistic aspect of it. There's not as much of like there's like a massive studio backing behind a lot of these movies, and I'm not knocking that they're not artists as well. But it's kind of like the lesser known artists kind of can go out and just show the world their art essentially, and I would like to create another platform for that, for more people to kind of spring off of, just kind of like what Brad Pitt did with his production company. Mm-hmm. So.
What do you keep in mind as far as social media is concerned? You mentioned that a little while ago, but in this day and age, Mitchell Slaggert can't be seen doing something that would harm his reputation. So are you always with the antenna up everywhere and when you're out in public?
Yes and no. I let my guard down sometimes because I'm always around like my closest friends and we don't really get bothered too much. But essentially, I don't do anything stupid, so
well,
I don't worry about it. Yeah,
that's a good plan.
Yep.
That's a good plan. When it comes to 2018, what will we see you in the rest of this year?
So, right now I got a TV show on Amazon Prime called Diablo Guardian, a movie called Spare Room, an independent movie, another movie called Right When You Get Work, but it's W, like right, like right me. And then the H&M campaign coming out. So,
what are your memories of living in Wilmington, North Carolina?
Just all the good college friends and always having them over, cooking up some venison tacos and going to the beach, spearfishing. Just, yeah, the beach bar is always a great time. My brother actually lives in Carolina Beach now, so I always get back down there as much as possible.
Do you have another plan to come down to Carolina Beach anytime soon?
I would love to, but I'm pretty booked up till the beginning of October with just work and play, and it never ends. It never ends.
When somebody asks Mitchell for advice, if a teenager comes up and says, I want to do what you do, obviously, I don't think you can tell them to just walk the streets and wait for somebody to tap them on the shoulder. Mm-hmm. But what do you tell them now that you've seen the fashion, now that you've seen the film industry? What do you give as far as advice?
Yeah, I'll be dead honest with them. If 6'1" is kind of like the cutoff. So, basically, like the normal height of a model is 6'2". So if they're below 6'1", they're like kind of like classified as like commercial. And I don't have any connections in that industry, so I basically tell them I can't help them out. And if they do fit like the right aesthetic, and I think Daniel, would like them, all I do is I'd be like, hey man, give me your Instagram. I'll send it over to Daniel, and if he likes you, great. If not, it's not the end of the world, because I've sent people to Daniel who we didn't like that have been signed at like agencies in New York. So I'll help you out as best I can. But if they're not tall enough, I would tell them, I'm sorry, man, I just can't help you. I don't have any connections in that realm.
Advice, though, to tell them as far as if they want to get into it, do you tell them as far as the film is concerned, practice, try to get in front of a camera, do your own homework?
I think what kind of helped me a lot as a model is because people like to work with me, in the sense that I was always nice and having a fun time, where it's unfortunate sometimes you see these models and they think they're special. They think they're walking around thinking like they're Jesus of Nazareth, and they think they're entitled and they're better, and it's frustrating to see that. But I'm sitting there like having a heart with an intern, instead of like when most people would just be kind of like trying to suck up to the photographer. And I believe people notice that, and they're like, okay, this is. I think I attribute that my parents raising me right to a lot of my success.
As a young man, when was the happiest you were making your parents proud of what you've done? I remember that I told Daniel the story that I remember the first contract I signed as a television news anchor. I remember I photographed the front page and sent it to my dad, and I was like, "Dad, look, I've made it." What was the first time that maybe you were just felt super proud that you made your parents proud?
I think it was when the Calvin Klein underwear came out, because that was a big deal. My family would just like go into stores in like Missouri or God knows where and just take photos with me, and it was just my whole family was proud of me, which made me feel very proud to be there.
Yeah, it's nice when you can make your own parents proud of you. I know we try a lot to do that in our lifetimes, but when you can actually get there, that's a special feeling.
That's a special feeling. Oh yeah, there's nothing like it.
All right. Well, I've taken a lot of your valuable time, Mitchell, and I really do appreciate it. Wilmington has a special tie with you as a student, but more than that, as a true American success story.
Thank you very much, and I'm absolutely honored to be a part of your show.
A big thank you to Mitchell Slaggert for sparing some of his very valuable time to be with us. If you want to keep up with his career, just follow him on Instagram. Slaggert is his handle there, and that's the one social media site where he is the most active. Before we go, I'd like to ask you a favor. Please subscribe to the One-on-One with John Evans podcast. If you could also leave us a rating and a review, that will help us bring in even more listeners. I'm John Evans. Thanks for being with us for this episode of One-on-One.